Afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's Plastics Today webinar, Expert Advice on Opening a New Facility or Expanding on Your Existing Operation. It's sponsored by Husky Technologies and broadcast by Informa. My name is Peter Krass, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we begin, I have a few very quick announcements. First of all, this webinar is designed to be interactive. The dock of widgets at the bottom of your screen will allow you to learn about today's speaker, download resources, share this webinar, and participate in the Q&A session that we'll have toward the end of the webinar. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event, no need to click. Toward the end of the webinar, I'll ask you to complete a survey, and that's found on the right-hand side of your screen. Please take a minute to fill out the survey before you leave us. Your feedback will provide us with valuable information on how we can improve these webinars in the future. And finally, if you have any technical issues during this webinar, there's two ways you can get some help. One, you can click the help widget that's at the bottom of your screen, or you can type your issue right into the Q&A area. In either way, we'll be glad to offer one-on-one assistance. All right, let's move on to our presentation, Expert Advice on Opening a New Facility or Expanding on Your Existing Operation. And discussing the topic today, we have William Aguilera. He's a project manager for the Americas in the advisory services factory planning at Husky Technologies. If you'd like to learn more about William, please visit the bios widget that's on your screen. With that, I'm going to hand it over to William.
Thank you very much for attending this webinar. In today's webinar, I'd like to talk to you about the best practices in facility design to reduce your operational costs and how involving the experts from the beginning can avoid unnecessary delays and costs. Before we get started, let me take a moment to talk about Husky Technologies. Husky is a top industrial company providing solutions for the delivery of food, beverages, and medicine. Husky has been in the business for nearly 70 years, and in that time, it has grown its presence from our origins near Toronto, Canada, to over 140 countries around the world. Approximately 65% of our business is related to rigid packaging, which includes supplying injection molding machines for the manufacturing of PET preforms and closures used for many consumer packaged goods, including beverages, edible oils, foods, and home personal care. The rest of our business is focused on other thin-wall rigid plastic packaging and also special interest in our medical business. Before we go into the details of this presentation, I want to quickly talk about advisory services at Husky. After all, you know Husky as a manufacturer of injection molding machines. However, Husky has a group called Advisory Services that provides business sustainability and operational advisory, in addition to the facility design and the factory planning. The purpose of these advisory services is to help our clients to improve their operational efficiencies, reduce their operational costs, and as a result, increase their enterprise value. So with that said, we'll talk about facility design later on towards the end of the presentation. So now I'd like to talk about the agenda for today's presentation. First, we'll look at some of the global trends and challenges facing the beverage packing industry. Then, we'll go over some case studies with examples of what customers have done to reach their goals. And finally, we'll talk about Husky's solutions when it comes to facility design that address those trends and challenges that I mentioned earlier. So number one on our agenda are the global trends and challenges facing the beverage packaging industry. I'm going to talk about 3 global trends we noticed that affect our industry the most. Of course, there are more, but we feel these are the ones that are most impactful. These trends are energy, sustainability, and labor shortage. Let me explain each of them in more detail now. Electricity cost is rising year after year. This is very evident globally. In the detail of this graph, you can see that the global trend for electricity has been increasing for a while. Only in 2022, the demand came down slightly because of very high prices that forced demand to come down. But now you can see the projection for the next few years is that again, there will be a strong demand. And therefore, the price of electricity will go up. So our global trend is that global electricity demand is set to rise. Driven by the decarbonization of energy systems, the increasing use of indoor cooling as the temperature climbs, and the growth of emerging and developing economies. Now let's look at North America. Here we see electricity trends in Canada. Industrial electricity prices vary significantly across Canada. As of April 2022, the industrial price of electricity in Edmonton averaged 14 cents per kilowatt hour. In contrast, Montreal recorded an average of 5 cents per kilowatt hour. The graph you see shows the price of industrial electricity in Canada from 2005 to 2023, with projections until 2040. It is estimated that in 2040, the end-use price of industrial electricity will be 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Forecasts are a baseline projection which is considered to be the most likely outcome for Canada's energy future, given underlying assumptions. Now, let's look at electricity trends in the United States. Industrial consumers of electricity in the United States paid an average of $8.45 per kilowatt hour in 2022. This was the highest figure recorded in the indicated period, and it represents an increase of roughly 20% in comparison to the previous year. Of course, in different states, the rates span a wide range. For example, Hawaii and California being the highest, and Louisiana the lowest with industrial electricity rates. In 2019, the effect of Corona was obvious because many industrial manufacturing companies were closed down. The electricity demand came down, and therefore the price came down. But as COVID passed, the supply went up, the demand went up, and again causing prices to go up as well. Okay, so now we've talked about the trends. Now let me tell you about the challenges this trend causes a typical converter. As you can see in this graph, energy is 5% of your operational cost, but in reality, it varies from place to place. Obviously, depending on certain areas of the world where the price of energy is much more expensive. For example, if you are in Europe, the energy cost is much more than if you are in the Middle East. This 5% shown is not a hard number. It varies depending on the location of the converters and brand owners' facilities. But regardless, it's a considerable amount of your operational cost, so it's important to pick the right equipment and design the facility in a way that it reduces the energy consumption. So here we have our second trend, which is sustainability. Here are some examples of brand owners with very bold goals with reducing their carbon footprint. For example, Coca-Cola aims to make 100% of their packaging recyclable globally by 2025, and to use at least 50% recycled material in their packaging by 2030. Nestle Waters aims to design 100% of their plastic packaging for recycling, and they are phasing out non-recyclable materials. By the end of 2022, 82% of their plastic packaging was designed for recycling. Pepsi announced their new Pep Positive strategic campaign, which includes agriculture, net zero emissions by 2040, and net water positive by 2030. In the US, PepsiCo announced that in 2023, they've increased their rPET use in Pepsi, Mountain Dew, and Aquafina drink bottles, with their aim to roll out 100% of rPET bottles next. Back in Canada, Pepsi has currently LifeWater, Aquafina, and Naked bottles made of 100% rPET already. Also, Ice River makes rPET resin entirely out of 100% recycled plastic. They do it in a closed-loop system where the resin they sell is made into sustainable packaging that's recycled and returned to be processed into resin over and over again. Existing and upcoming laws and legislations are forcing brand owners and converters to increase rPET in their packaging. For example, in Mexico, on March 1st, 2023, Mexico City's circular economy law came into effect, which aims to encourage and promote responsible production and consumption habits through reuse, manufacturing, and recycling. So, we talked about the trends. So now what? Let me tell you about the challenges converters are facing with this trend. How can you reach your sustainability goals and still be a world-class producer? The first one is quality and consistency of your rPET. What we are noting is that quality of rPET, unlike virgin PET, is not consistent from batch to batch nor from supplier to supplier. rPET has higher dust concentrations than PET. rPET also introduces more variables like variation, IV, concentration, and cycle time. The quality is not the same, and that affects the processing capabilities. That makes the processing and skill set required very challenging for converters and brand owners. Third is specific injection molding systems. In addition to these two challenges, your equipment has to be specifically designed to accept up to 100% rPET in your packaging. Right, so basically you cannot buy any machine and expect 100% output. Specifically, your resin drying equipment and your injection molding machine have to be designed to accept high volumes of rPET. The last point is the plant infrastructure and design. There are challenges when it comes to plant design and infrastructure. You have to be careful and you have to be aware of specific equipment and their dimensions. For example, dryers, hoppers, oil condensers, blenders, and so on. These are all specifically designed to accept high levels of rPET material. Later on in the presentation, I'll give you an example of these challenges when it comes to plant design and infrastructure during a case study. Okay, so this is our third and last trend, which is the global skilled labor shortage. Nations are experiencing a rapidly aging population and decline of labor market participation. What you're noticing is 77% of employers around the world are experiencing difficulties in finding skill-set people. Automation can provide numerous benefits for manufacturers, such as reducing costs, improving safety, enabling flexibility, and stimulating innovation. Cost savings are achieved by saving time, energy, materials, and labor. Quality is also improved by minimizing errors, defects, and variations. Safety is improved by reducing human exposure to hazardous or repetitive tasks. Efficiency is also improved by optimizing processes, resources, and performance. Flexibility is enabled by adapting to changing demands, specifications, and markets. Finally, automation can enable the creation of new designs, products, and services. Canada's manufacturing sector is also grappling with the effects of labor shortage, specifically in finding skilled workers such as machinists, welders, and assemblers. The industry's reliance on specialized skills has made it challenging to fill vacancies. As a result, manufacturing companies are facing production delays and are unable to meet the rising demand of their product. US manufacturing is poised for a significant resurgence. The supply chain problems caused by the pandemic have shown a demand for skilled workers. American manufacturing is critically short of the labor it needs to drive the manufacturing market forward. There's simply not enough skilled workers to do the job, nor enough unskilled workers willing to learn. Necessity is truly the mother of invention. The manufacturing labor shortage has paved the way for widespread development of some very exciting innovations in robotics and data-driven software for manufacturing. The challenge to brand owners and converters is that labor is a good portion of your operational cost. Again, this number is not set in stone. It depends on your location and your application. You can imagine labor in some regions is much more expensive than other parts of the world. But regardless, this is a good portion of your operational cost. So let's go to the second part of the presentation and talk about some case studies. When it comes to energy, as I showed you before, energy is a good part of your operational cost. In this example, 5% of your operational cost is broken down on the pie chart to the right. This shows injection molding machines as your primary equipment consumption, which means this is most of your energy costs or energy consumption in the plant. This is followed by process water systems, which involves cooling towers, chillers, and compressed air equipment. Third on the list is the resin drying equipment, along with the resin conveying system. So now that we know the major consumers in your operation, let's focus on these and see the effect of selecting the right equipment has on your operation. Selection of the machine is important. Husky has the most efficient systems in terms of energy consumption. You have to use the machine in the right way and apply the right process. Husky can help select the equipment when designing a new or existing plant. Injection molding machines have evolved over the years. As you can see on the graph, back in the 1990s to the latest generation, the history of Husky injection molding machines have reduced the energy consumption by almost 45%. So the selection of your injection molding equipment is extremely important. As again, injection molding machines consume the majority of your energy consumption in your operation. The other example is the resin drying equipment. From the early generations to present, the drying system energy consumption has been reduced by 66%. Since the drying system is also one of your major energy consumers in your operation, the selection of the equipment in your operation is extremely important. So we've talked about the selection of equipment. Now let's look at the facility design and the effect of the facility design on your energy consumption. I like to start with the process water system. So here, for example, free cooling will give you up to 40% reduction in energy consumption when used and applied properly. So right, water is not an energy consumption, but it's also part of your utilities. Tower waters here in North America are very common. We find that installing dry coolers are a better option because you're not consuming as much water as a cooling tower. There is no water evaporation. With a dry cooler, there is no water evaporation, and basically your water consumption is minimum. Other points to consider are to have your mechanical room close to the production hall to avoid unnecessary bends in the lines. Indoor and outdoor chillers need proper space for operation and maintenance. And of course, plant design from the beginning to keep your operational costs in range. All right, so now we know that. And the right equipment selection plus optimized facility design can reduce your energy consumption tremendously. And Husky's factory planning team of experts can assist you in your equipment selection and in optimizing the design of your facility in order to reduce your energy consumption. Now let's talk about a case study when it comes to rPET consumption. Our customer was set up for virgin PET for many years. Recently, to achieve their sustainability goals and the sustainability goals dictated by their customer, they needed to increase the percentage of rPET in their packaging. However, what they realized was that the resin hopper and the resin dryer was not sized correctly for rPET usage. Now, just for you to know, when we talk about PET resin, it usually requires about 180 degrees Celsius temperature in the hopper for proper drying. When you dry rPET, it requires less temperature, but more residence time in the hopper. Therefore, more residence times means a bigger hopper. If it's not big enough, you don't get the residence time right. So now, if you are landlocked, or if you cannot go higher or expand the cell in either direction, you have to make compromises. So these guys said, we need more residence time. What can we do? Our recommendation was to increase the cycle time of the machine in order to compensate for the longer residence time that they needed. You see, that caused additional production hours. The facility was not designed to accommodate rPET because they didn't have the height, and therefore they had to increase cycle time to compensate for the lack of residence time. And that resulted in additional production hours and unnecessary operational costs. Involving the experts from the beginning would have avoided all of these extra costs. This is the value that Husky brings. We are aware of these challenges, so we try to avoid these types of mistakes that sometimes converters can make. The next topic I want to talk about is, as we mentioned earlier, we talked about shortage of labor. Now, when it comes to shortage of labor, Husky has many different levels of automation. But let's be clear, when we talk about automation, we are not talking only about automated guided vehicles and robots. Automation can happen in many different levels of your operation and your production. For example, self-cleaning mold technology is one type of automation. This is a Husky patent technology that has been developed to reduce the cleaning time of your mold from, let's say, 4 hours to a single shot, which is a matter of seconds. So this is what we mean with different levels of automation. The other type of automation is inline quality monitoring systems and to automatically detect the defects as it's coming out of the injection molding machine. Okay, so production process data collection is another type of automation. A typical facility has manpower to collect data, production numbers, and quantities that they produce, including scrap and machine downtime. So all that data could totally be automated, and this is why Husky introduced ShotScope 4.0 that automatically collects all of the production and process monitoring variables and puts it into a graphical format that could be used to analyze the data. There are other types of automation, such as AGVs to take the product out of the machine hall and into the warehouse, or from the warehouse to the loading area. Automated storage and retrieval system is another form of automation. So when it comes to automation, there are many different levels, and some of these automations are Husky's priority. Some of them are very common in the industry, but the bottom line is that Husky's factory planning team has all sorts of expertise in all these automations to help our converters and brand owners to reduce operational costs and meet the challenges when it comes to shortage of skilled labor. Okay, so you see, here is another type of automation that is very unique to Husky. We call it Advantage Plus Elite. The purpose of this is to monitor customers' production and process information automatically. Any deviation, either on cycle time, energy, consumption, quality, or downtime, we proactively call the customer and try to get to the root cause of the issue and fix it before it's too late. This is a very unique service to Husky, and no other manufacturer offers this. This is another level of automation to help our customers to be predictive and proactive rather than reactive. Okay, so we're at point 3. That's basically it. We've talked about the trends, we've talked about the challenges, and we've talked about Husky's solutions. In the presentation, we also talked about Husky's advisory services. I would like to focus more on facility design and factory planning in the next couple of slides to explain what this team is and what we can do for you. Business operational and infrastructure advisory strategies improve operational efficiencies, and they reduce operational costs and boost enterprise value. Husky's factory planning group has more than 30 years of experience when it comes to injection molding design and project management, and we've done hundreds of projects around the world. We are an engineering consulting team consisting of seasoned engineers and consultants with the mandate of optimizing and designing state-of-the-art facilities for our customers. Staffed by the industry's most diverse team of specialists, the factory planning group designs and delivers functional, cost-effective, and lean injection molding facilities. The differentiating factor here is that Husky has decades of experience building facilities specifically for injection molding operation. Our core business is selling world-class injection molding machines. We then deliver a complete system solution, including resin dryers, preform handling, molds, and hot runners. Now we are seeing a lot more interest in automation, so we are incorporating them and taking that into consideration. With local factory planning services available in the Americas, we want to extend our customer support in these areas of expertise. These are some numbers to show the projects we've done in the past to keep our customers in the lead. We've done over 400 projects globally, which 80 of them are turnkey projects. Out of those 80 turnkey projects, 10 of them were with Coca-Cola around the world. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for attending the webinar. If you have any questions or require any assistance in designing a new facility or expanding an existing facility, or even modifying an existing process service, such as water, power, air, please don't hesitate to contact me directly, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. And if there's any questions on the line, Peter, you can let me know.
Okay, thank you, William. That was really good. We're going to go into our Q&A in a moment, but before we do, I'd like to ask everyone to take a look at the webinar survey, which I mentioned earlier. It's available on the right of the presentation window. If you've closed the survey, you can reopen it. Just click the icon at the bottom of your screen. Thanks again for filling out the feedback form. Your participation in this survey helps us to serve you better in the future. All right, let's go on to our Q&A. As a reminder, you can still type your question just right into the text box that's at the right of the presentation window, or you can click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. And joining us, we're going to welcome Sean Galzarian, Director of Advisory Services at Husky Technologies, and Sean will chime in during our Q&A session with additional details. And we'll do our best to get to all the questions. If we can't answer them all, we'll share them with our speakers who can reply to you offline. All right, let's go to our questions. We've got a bunch here. Okay, here's our first one. How can technology and automation be integrated into factory planning to streamline operations and reduce costs?
Okay, thank you, Peter. So we did talk about that in my presentation. As you may recall, in one of the slides regarding labor shortage, we talked about typical automations that we include in our design. For example, process water switch over to free cooling. We can install automatic valves to detect the temperature without any human intervention. Also, resin handling automatic valves to divert material to the necessary base and keep the flow going. And also process data collection and monitoring to optimize the injection molding machine and production, as well as minimizing scrap. All these points will reduce your operational costs, and these points are exactly what we incorporate in our facility design.
Okay, thank you. Next question is about sustainability. What role does sustainability play in modern factory planning, and how can factories be designed to minimize their environmental impact?
Okay, thanks, Peter. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, sustainability plays a major factor in today's corporate world. Major corporations have set bold goals and timelines when it comes to sustainability. Typically, we can achieve sustainability goals in different ways by reducing energy and water consumption. Also, water requirements through proper equipment selection and design is an example of reducing your carbon footprint. Another example could be through reduction of raw material consumption. You can achieve this by lightweighting products and also increasing the recycled content in your application. I think those are good steps forward.
Okay, great. Our next question has to do with data analytics. How can data analytics and predictive maintenance be used in factory planning to improve equipment reliability and reduce downtime?
Okay. I think in my presentation, I also talked about this. I was talking about the shot scope and Advantage Elite. These Husky services can predict the effect of changes in process parameters caused either by injection molding machines or external auxiliaries. It focuses on quality, cycle time, downtime. Now, because of these services and technologies, we can dramatically improve the operational efficiencies and reduce downtime.
Okay, great. Our next question. What's the advantage of having Husky designing my plant rather than hiring a general contractor to provide the design?
No, I mean, the advantage of Husky's expertise, it comes because we focus a lot in injection molding operations. Customers looking to build new and expand their existing facility will still have to hire a general contractor. And that general contractor will have to have a proper mechanical structure, electrical engineers to be part of their team and to design the plant. However, Husky can provide the layouts of the entire building, including the process services such as the cooling water equipment, power loads, compressed air capacity, resin handling distribution systems, which are key elements in designing a facility. And some of these key items might be missed by a general contractor because they don't have all that experience.
Okay, thank you. Here's our next question. When designing a factory layout for optimal efficiency and productivity, what are the key factors to consider?
I could answer that, but I don't know if Sean wants to answer a question too and participate. If Sean, what do you think, or you want me to take it?
Well, go ahead. Go ahead, William, if you would like to answer that, please.
Okay. So we like to think of lean manufacturing when we're producing or we're designing plants. And then we take all of the areas of the facility into consideration, which is the machine hall, resin dryers, the material handling lines, and all of those things into consideration. And yeah, boost productivity. And what else? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of little details that go into the productivity aspect of it. For example, any extra foot of resin conveying that occurs and is not optimized for the process will cost you money, energy, and it also degrades the material, the raw material. So you want to keep all of your core departments close by.
Okay, very good. All right. Next question. How do changing market dynamics and customer preferences influence factory planning and flexibility?
You were breaking up just a little bit there at the end. Do you mind repeating the question, Peter?
Sure. This is a question about changing market dynamics and customer preferences. How do they influence factory planning and flexibility?
Okay. Well, a key factor to consider is to think about the future possibilities. A typical mistake that we see converters do is that they design their facility for today's product mix and their current annual volumes. However, as the market changes, converters feel the need for a higher cavitation and larger machines. That's why we always design the plant for maximum flexibility and future growth. For example, the production area has to be ready for expansion, and this could be this might involve taking down a wall, and also the supporting infrastructure, such as process water, power, and compressed air, has to be designed for future growth and flexibility. It could also be something simple as leaving provisions for future equipment that the lines are already in place, but in the future, when you need that capacity, all you have to do is purchase the equipment, and all of the provisions are there for it to run.
Okay, thanks, William. Here's our next question. What are some of the largest obstacles with updating an operation to recycling food-grade material, especially if there's no previous experience with food grade?
Perhaps, William, I can answer that question, if that's okay with you.
Go ahead, please.
I think William, to a degree, answered this question through the course of the presentation in a couple of examples that he brought up. But I can probably summarize that very quickly in a couple of points. There are basically three main areas that a converter or a brand owner needs to keep in mind. One is, do you have the right equipment to use rPET material? The equipment would be either primary equipment or auxiliary equipment. Auxiliary equipment meaning drying system, the hoppers and dryers. Do you have the right equipment in order to increase the rPET percentage in your packaging? The second thing is, do you have the right design of the facility to accommodate specifically your auxiliary equipment? I think William mentioned an example of a customer that was landlocked in the mezzanine area from the height perspective, from the width perspective, and they purchased the dryers back at the time that they were running 100% virgin, so the dryer was sized for 100% virgin. And then later on, as they increase the percentage of rPET, obviously now the hoppers is not sized correctly, and they cannot change the hopper either going higher or going wider, and therefore that affected their cycle time and unfortunately additional production hours. So it's important to make sure that the facility is designed to accommodate the equipment that runs rPET. The third one to keep in mind is the processing knowledge, and that's extremely important. Do you have the right processing knowledge when it comes to running rPET material? A percentage of rPET, 20%, 30%, 50%, or 100% rPET. I think these three main factors, do you have the right equipment? Do you have the right facility design? Do you have the right expertise and know-hows and knowledge to run rPET? I think those are the important things to keep in mind. And again, Husky has the capability to help you in all those three areas, and we would be more than happy, obviously, to do so.
Very good. All right. It looks like another question. Do we have another question? No. It seems like we have answered all the questions. So, William, any closing statements for our audience before we say goodbye?
Sure, Peter. Yes, I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation. I hope, if anything, you guys were informed of the best practices on your facility. But of course, factory planning will be very glad to help you out in all of those details and reach your goals.
Very good. Thank you, William. Thank you, Sean. We certainly appreciate your expertise and time today. And I'd like to thank our sponsor, Husky Technologies, as well as everyone in the audience. We certainly appreciate your attention and participation. Within the next 24 hours, you'll receive a personalized follow-up email with details and a link to today's presentation on demand. Please feel free to invite your colleagues and peers who did not join us today to listen to this event on demand. This webinar is copyright 2023 by Informa. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by Informa Markets. The individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and opinions. On behalf of our guest speakers, William Aguilera and Sean Gozarian, I'm Peter Krass. Thanks for your time and have a great rest of your day.